I'm Susan, and I'm 28 years old. My sister just announced she's pregnant with my fiancé's baby, and my entire family is acting like I should throw them a congratulations party. The worst part? They're all looking at me like I'm the villain for not being supportive enough. Let me paint you a picture of how this delightful family meeting went down. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. So there I was, sitting in my parents' living room last Tuesday evening, thinking we were having a normal family dinner. Mom had insisted everyone come over for her famous pot roast, which should have been my first red flag. She only makes pot roast when she's got bad news to deliver. The last time was when Dad lost his job 3 years ago. Everyone was there. My parents, obviously. My sister Rachel, looking unusually nervous and fidgety. Her boyfriend Derek, who couldn't seem to make eye contact with anyone. And my fiancé Michael, who kept checking his phone every 30 seconds like he was expecting some urgent message. I should mention that Michael and I had been together for 3 years and engaged for 8 months. We were supposed to get married in 6 weeks. I had the dress, the venue was booked, and I'd already put deposits down on everything from the flowers to the band. My parents had been so proud when he proposed, going on and about how successful he was at his accounting firm and how stable our future looked together. Rachel had been acting weird around Michael lately, but I figured it was just typical sister jealousy. She's 2 years younger than me and has always been a bit dramatic about not being the center of attention. When I got engaged, she made some comments about how I was rushing into things and how Michael seemed too good to be true. I thought she was just being protective, but sitting there at dinner, watching them all exchange these uncomfortable glances, I knew something was seriously wrong. The conversation felt forced, like everyone was reading from a script they'd rehearsed. Mom kept asking me about wedding preparations with this fake enthusiasm that made my skin crawl. Dad was unusually quiet, just nodding along and avoiding eye contact. Then Rachel cleared her throat and said she had an announcement to make. The room went dead silent. She looked at Derek, then at Michael, then finally at me. Her hands were shaking as she placed them on the table. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My first reaction was confusion, not anger. I looked at Derek, expecting him to look excited or nervous or something. Instead, he looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. That's when the pieces started clicking together in my brain, though I still couldn't quite believe what I was thinking. "Congratulations," I said automatically, because that's what you're supposed to say when someone announces a pregnancy. "When are you due?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Susan, there's something else I need to tell you." And that's when my whole world came crashing down around me, because the next words out of her mouth were going to change everything. And deep down, I already knew what she was going to say. "It's Michael's baby," Rachel whispered, and the words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning, and I felt like I was watching this scene happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of sick joke or misunderstanding. I looked at Michael, expecting him to jump up and deny it, to tell everyone this was crazy. Instead, he was staring at his hands, his face pale as death. That's when I knew it was true. "How long?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady considering my entire life had just imploded. "How long has this been going on?" "Susan, let me explain," Michael started, finally looking up at me with those blue eyes that I used to think were so honest and trustworthy. "How long?" I repeated, each word sharp as a knife. Rachel was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "About 4 months," she whispered. 4 months. While I was planning our wedding, picking out centerpieces and arguing with the caterer about menu options, my fiancé was sleeping with my sister. While I was excitedly showing off my engagement ring to coworkers and talking about our future together, they were sneaking around behind my back. The math was simple and brutal. Rachel was apparently 8 weeks pregnant, which meant this had been going on long before the baby was conceived. This wasn't a one-time mistake or moment of weakness. This was a full-blown affair. "Where?" I asked, still maintaining that eerie calm that comes with complete shock. "Where were you meeting up?" "Susan, does it really matter?" Mom interjected, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I pulled away from her like she'd burned me. "It matters to me," I said, looking directly at Rachel. "I want to know where my sister and my fiancé were having their secret relationship while I was planning my wedding." Michael cleared his throat. "Sometimes at Derek's apartment when he was working late shifts. Sometimes," he paused, looking ashamed, "sometimes at the hotel downtown. the hotel downtown, the same hotel where I'd had my bridal shower just 2 months ago. I wondered if they'd been meeting there that very weekend, laughing about how clueless I was while I opened gifts and thanked everyone for celebrating my upcoming marriage. Derek finally spoke up, his voice cracking. I had no idea about any of this until yesterday. Rachel told me she was pregnant, but she didn't say who the father was until this morning. So Derek was just as blindsided as I was. At least there was one person at this table who wasn't part of the conspiracy to destroy my life. We're going to get married, Rachel announced suddenly, like this was some kind of solution that would make everything okay. Michael and I are going to get married and raise the baby together. I started laughing, not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming or completely falling apart. Here was my little sister, announcing that she was going to marry my fiancé and live happily ever after with their surprise baby, and she was presenting it like it was good news. Well, I said, standing up from the table and grabbing my purse. I guess congratulations are in order then. Let me know when you set a date so I can make sure to be out of town. Susan. Wait, Dad called out, speaking for the first time since this nightmare began. We need to talk about this as a family. I turned around and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and walked me down the aisle at my high school graduation. This man who was now asking me to sit down and discuss my sister stealing my fiancé like it was a minor scheduling conflict. There's nothing to discuss, I said. Rachel made her choice. Michael made his choice. Now I'm making mine. And with that, I walked out of my parents' house and didn't look back. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage and disbelief. I kept expecting my phone to ring, expecting someone to chase after me and tell me this was all a horrible mistake. But my phone stayed silent, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, the reality was starting to sink in. Michael's car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't unusual since he often worked late. But tonight, I wondered if he was actually at work or if he was back at my parents' house, comforting my pregnant sister and planning their future together. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house I'd thought we'd live in together as husband and wife. We'd bought it just 6 months ago, both of our names on the mortgage. I'd spent weeks picking out paint colors and furniture, imagining the life we'd build here together. Now all I could think about was how many times he'd brought Rachel here when I wasn't home. Had they been in our bed? On our couch? In the kitchen where I made coffee every morning, completely oblivious to what was happening behind my back? When I finally went inside, the silence was deafening. Every corner of the house reminded me of Michael, of our plans, of the future that had just evaporated. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and opened his closet, staring at his clothes hanging there like nothing had changed. That's when I noticed that some of his things were missing. His favorite sweater wasn't there. Neither was his good suit or his dress shoes. He'd been planning this. While I was at work today thinking about what to make for dinner and whether we needed to pick up more thank you cards for the wedding gifts, he was packing up his belongings and preparing to leave me. The coward couldn't even face me himself. He'd let my sister do the dirty work of telling me about their affair while he sat there like a guilty child waiting for his punishment. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through our text messages from the past few weeks. How had I missed the signs? But looking back now, everything was obvious. The way he'd been working late more often, the way he'd stopped talking about the wedding with any real enthusiasm, the way he'd been distant and distracted whenever we were together. My phone buzzed with a text message, and for a split second, my heart jumped, thinking it might be Michael with some explanation that would make this all make sense. Instead, it was from my mom. Honey, I know this is hard, but we need to talk. Rachel really needs our support right now. She's scared and confused, and she made a mistake. Can you come back so we can work this out as a family? Rachel needs support? Rachel made a mistake? I read the message 3 times, waiting for the part where my mother acknowledged that I might need some support too, or that maybe Michael had also made a mistake, or that anyone in this situation gave a damn about how I was feeling. But there was nothing, just concern for poor, pregnant Rachel who had somehow become the victim in this story. I typed back, "What about what I need? What about supporting me?" The response came back almost immediately. "Of course we support you too, sweetheart. But Rachel is in a delicate condition, and she's going to need her family more than ever. I know you're hurt, but try to think about what's best for everyone." What's best for everyone? Translation: shut up, smile, and pretend this is all fine so we don't make things uncomfortable for Rachel and Michael. Have you ever experienced a moment when you realized that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally actually had very clear conditions on their love? Drop a comment below if you've ever felt like you were expected to just accept being thrown under the bus for the sake of family harmony. I turned off my phone and went to pour myself a large glass of wine. Tomorrow, I would start figuring out how to untangle my life from Michael's. Tonight, I just needed to process the fact that my entire family had chosen my cheating sister over me. But I had no idea that this was just the beginning of their betrayal. I woke up the next morning on my couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, with an empty wine bottle on the coffee table and 17 missed calls on my phone. 12 were from my parents, 3 from Rachel, and 2 from Michael. There were also about 30 text messages, ranging from apologies to guilt trips to outright demands that I call them back immediately. The headache from crying and wine was nothing compared to the sick feeling in my stomach when I remembered that yesterday hadn't been a nightmare. My sister really was pregnant with my fiancé's baby, and they really were planning to get married. I made coffee with shaking hands and tried to figure out what to do next. The practical side of my brain kicked in, making a mental list of everything that would need to be canceled or changed. The venue, the caterer, the band, the flowers, the honeymoon flights. Hundreds of people would need to be notified that the wedding was off. My phone rang again. Mom's name appeared on the screen, and against my better judgment, I answered. "Susan, thank God," she said, her voice filled with relief. "We've been so worried about you. You didn't answer any of our calls last night." "I needed some time to think," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Of course, sweetheart. This is a lot to process. Why don't you come over for breakfast? We can sit down and figure out how to move forward." Move forward. Like this was just a minor setback that could be resolved with a family meeting and some pancakes. "Mom, there's nothing to figure out. Michael cheated on me with Rachel. They're having a baby together. He chose her over me. It's pretty straightforward." "Susan, honey, it's not that simple. Sometimes these things just happen. People fall in love, and it's messy and complicated, but that doesn't mean we can't work through it as a family." I had to set the phone down for a moment because I was afraid I might throw it across the room. People fall in love? Like this was some romantic comedy where everyone would end up happy if we just gave it time? "Are you seriously suggesting that I should just accept this and move on?" I asked when I picked the phone back up. "I'm suggesting that holding on to anger isn't going to help anyone. Rachel feels terrible about how this happened. Michael feels terrible too. They both know they handled this badly, but the baby is innocent in all of this. The baby. Of course it all came back to the baby. The magical pregnancy that somehow erased all the lies and betrayal and made my feelings irrelevant. What exactly do you expect me to do, Mom? Be the maid of honor at their wedding? Help plan baby showers? Pretend this is all fine? I expect you to be the mature, loving person I raised you to be. I expect you to put family first, the way we always have in this family. Family first. The motto that had been drilled into my head since childhood, except apparently it only applied when I was the one expected to sacrifice for everyone else's benefit. "And what about Michael's family?" I asked. "Have you talked to them about this situation?" There was a long pause. "Susan, Michael's parents think it might be better if you didn't come to any family gatherings for a while. Just until things settle down and people adjust to the new situation." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell them?" "We explained that you're having a hard time accepting Rachel's pregnancy and that you might cause some drama if you're around. We thought it would be better for everyone if you took some space to work through your feelings." They had painted me as the problem. The unstable ex-fiancé who couldn't handle her sister's happiness. The bitter woman who was causing drama instead of celebrating new life. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. "Rachel sleeps with my fiancé, gets pregnant, and announces they're getting married. And somehow I'm the one who needs to take space and work through my feelings? Susan, you're twisting this around. No one is saying you're the bad guy here. We're just trying to find a way for everyone to be happy. Everyone except me, apparently. That's not fair, Susan. We want you to be happy too. But happiness sometimes means accepting things we can't change and finding a way to move forward." I hung up the phone and immediately called my best friend Jessica, who lived across the country in Portland. She answered on the second ring, and I broke down completely, telling her everything that had happened. "Are you kidding me right now?" she said when I finished. "They're actually asking you to be okay with this? They keep saying it's about family and that I need to be supportive and mature. Susan, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. You don't owe any of these people anything. Not your cheating ex-fiancé, not your backstabbing sister, and definitely not your parents who are more concerned about avoiding awkwardness than supporting their daughter who just got her heart ripped out." Hearing someone validate my feelings was like a lifeline. For the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel crazy for being angry. "What do I do, Jess?" "You get the hell away from all of them and you start over somewhere that isn't poisoned by their toxicity." She was right. There was nothing left for me here except more manipulation and guilt trips and expectations that I should smile and pretend everything was fine. That's when I started making a plan that would change everything. The plan started forming while I sat in my empty house, surrounded by wedding planning binders and engagement photos that now felt like evidence of my own stupidity. I had built my entire adult life around Michael and our future together. My job at the local marketing firm, our house, our shared bank accounts, our friend group that was really his friend group. Everything was intertwined with him and, by extension, with my family. But here's what my family didn't know. I wasn't as helpless as they thought I was. See, while Michael had been busy with his accounting job and secret affair, I'd been quietly building something of my own. For the past 2 years, I'd been doing freelance digital marketing work on weekends and evenings, initially just to save extra money for the wedding. But the side business had grown bigger than I'd expected, and I now had clients across the country who paid me very well for social media campaigns and website design. I'd been keeping the money in a separate account that Michael didn't know about, planning to surprise him with it as a down payment on a bigger house after we got married. The account currently had about $45,000 in it. I also had something else my family didn't know about, a job offer in San Francisco that I'd received 3 weeks ago. The company had found me through my freelance work and offered me a position as their head of digital marketing, with a salary that was nearly double what I was making in Ohio. I'd turned it down because Michael didn't want to leave his firm, and I thought being a supportive fiancé meant prioritizing his career over mine. How naive I'd been. I called the company back that afternoon, praying they hadn't filled the position yet. To my relief, they were still interested and willing to wait 2 weeks for me to relocate. Actually, I told the hiring manager, I could start in 1 week if that works better for you. That would be fantastic. We'll email you the paperwork today. Just like that, I had an escape route. The next step was harder, figuring out how to disentangle myself from Michael financially without him knowing what I was planning. Our house was jointly owned, but I'd put down the initial down payment using money from my inheritance when my grandmother died. My lawyer had advised me to keep documentation of that just in case. Now I was grateful for his caution. I spent the evening going through financial records and making lists. Michael's name was on the mortgage, but most of the furniture was mine from my apartment before we moved in together. The car I drove was in my name only. Our joint checking account had about $8,000 in it, which was mostly my contribution since I'd been paying the household bills while he saved for what I thought were wedding expenses. The wedding expenses. I grabbed the folder of receipts and contracts, my hands shaking as I realized what I was looking at. Every single vendor payment had come from my accounts. The venue deposit, the caterer, the band, the flowers, the photographer. I'd paid for everything while Michael had supposedly been saving his money for our honeymoon and future house improvements. I'd funded my own humiliation. But that gave me an idea that made me smile for the first time in 2 days. The next morning, I started making phone calls, first to the venue. Hi, this is Susan Mitchell. I have a wedding booked for next month, and I need to discuss some changes. Of course, Ms. Mitchell. What can I help you with? I need to cancel the event. I'll be speaking with my lawyer about recovering the deposit since the cancellation is due to extenuating circumstances. I use the same approach with every vendor. Professional, matter-of-fact, and just vague enough about the circumstances that they assumed there might be legal complications if they didn't cooperate. Most of them agreed to refund at least half of my deposits, especially when I mentioned that the groom had been having an affair with a family member. By the end of the day, I'd recovered about $12,000 in deposits. Not everything, but enough to fund my move to California with money left over. I also did something that felt petty but satisfied. I canceled the honeymoon flights and hotel reservations that were in my name, recovering another $3,000 in travel credits. Michael had no idea that any of this was happening. As far as he knew, I was at home nursing my broken heart and eventually coming around to accept the situation. He'd texted me a few times with messages like, "We need to talk," and "I know you're hurt, but we can work this out." But I hadn't responded. Let him think I was falling apart. Let them all think I was just going to quietly disappear and let them have their happy little family. They had no idea what was coming. The day before I left for San Francisco, I decided to attend Rachel's impromptu engagement party. Yes, you heard that right. 3 days after destroying my life, my parents had organized an engagement party for Rachel and Michael. The irony was apparently lost on them. I got the invitation via text from my mother. Small family gathering tonight at 6 p.m. to celebrate Rachel and Michael's engagement. I hope you'll come and show your support. It would mean so much to Rachel. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to just disappear without a word and let them figure out later that I was gone. But there was something I needed to do first, and this party provided the perfect opportunity. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully. I wore the red dress that had always been Michael's favorite, the one he'd bought me for my birthday last year. I did my hair and makeup with extra care, making sure I looked confident and unbroken. When I walked into my parents' house at exactly 6 o'clock, the room went quiet. Rachel and Michael were sitting close together on the couch, her hand resting on her still flat stomach in a gesture that was probably meant to look protective and maternal. My parents were bustling around with drinks and appetizers, playing the perfect hosts. "Susan," Mom said, her voice overly bright with relief. "I'm so glad you came. This means so much to all of us." I smiled and hugged her, playing the part of the gracious sister who had come to terms with the situation. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. "After all, it's not every day your sister gets engaged to your ex-fiancé." There was an uncomfortable laugh from Dad, who apparently couldn't tell if I was being sincere or sarcastic. I walked over to Rachel and Michael, who both looked nervous about how I was going to react. Rachel stood up awkwardly, as if she wasn't sure whether she should hug me or run. "Congratulations," I said, embracing her warmly. "You must be so excited about the baby." "Thank you," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "Susan, I'm so sorry about how this happened. I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did go this far," I said, my voice gentle but clear. "And now you're going to be a mom. That's a big responsibility." I turned to Michael, who was watching me with a mixture of guilt and confusion. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so composed. "Michael," I said, extending my hand to shake his like we were meeting for the first time. "I hope you'll be very happy together." He took my hand cautiously. "Susan, I want you to know that I never planned for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," I said, still smiling. "You hurt me a lot. But that's okay, because sometimes people need to get hurt before they can see clearly." "What do you mean?" Rachel asked, sitting back down and pulling Michael down beside her. "I mean that this whole situation has helped me realize some important things about my life and what I want for my future." I reached into my purse and pulled out a gift bag that I'd carefully prepared. "I brought you something for your engagement." Rachel's face lit up as she took the bag, probably thinking this was a sign that I was ready to forgive and forget. She reached inside and pulled out a thick folder. "What is this?" she asked, opening it and scanning the papers inside. "Those are copies of all the receipts for our wedding," I said, my voice still sweet and calm. "The venue, the caterer, the flowers, the band, the photographer. Everything I paid for when I thought I was marrying Michael." Rachel's face went pale as she realized what she was looking at. Michael leaned over to read the papers, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. "The total comes to about $38,000, I continued. "Since you two are getting married now, I thought you might want to use the same vendors. Of course, you'll need to pay for everything yourselves this time." The room had gone completely silent. My parents were standing frozen by the kitchen counter, apparently just realizing that this conversation wasn't going the way they'd expected. "Susan," Michael said slowly, "what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've canceled everything and recovered what deposits I could. But most of the money is gone, and you'll need to start over if you want to have a wedding." "You canceled our wedding?" Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "I canceled my wedding," I corrected. "The wedding I planned and paid for with the man I thought loved me. You and Michael are welcome to plan your own wedding with your own money." "Susan, this is ridiculous," Dad said, finally finding his voice. "You can't just cancel everything out of spite." "I'm not doing this out of spite," I said, turning to face him. "I'm doing this because I paid for a wedding between Michael and me. Since that's not happening anymore, there's no reason for me to keep funding an event I won't be attending." "But the deposits," Mom said weakly. "All that money?" "Yes, it's a shame about the money, but I'm sure Rachel and Michael will be happy to reimburse me for what I lost. After all, they're the ones who benefited from the situation that made cancellation necessary." I looked around the room at their shocked faces, feeling a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't experienced in days. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was the one in control. "There's one more thing," I said, reaching back into my purse and pulling out an envelope. "This is for you, Mom and Dad." Dad took the envelope with shaking hands and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message that I'd printed out that morning. "What does it say?" Mom asked. Dad read it aloud, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for showing me that blood doesn't always mean family, and family doesn't always mean support. I'll remember this lesson for the rest of my life. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to apologize for choosing my sister's happiness over my well-being. Susan." I picked up my purse and headed for the door, leaving them all sitting in stunned silence. "Where are you going?" Rachel called after me. I turned back one last time, giving them all a smile that was both sad and satisfied. I'm going to build a life with people who actually value me, I said. Good luck with everything. And then I walked out of that house and out of their lives, with no intention of ever looking back. What I didn't know was that my real revenge was just beginning. 3 months later, I was settling into my new life in San Francisco when the first desperate phone call came. I was in my beautiful new apartment overlooking the bay, sipping coffee and reviewing quarterly reports for my thriving marketing campaigns, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Susan. The voice was shaky, barely recognizable. It was my mother. How did you get this number? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I had to call your old company. They gave me your work number and I convinced them it was a family emergency. Her voice cracked on the word emergency. Susan, we need to talk. Things have gotten really bad here. I almost hung up right then. After 3 months of blissful silence from my family, I'd started to believe they'd gotten the message. Apparently not. What kind of bad? I asked, though I wasn't sure why I was encouraging this conversation. It's about the money, Susan. The wedding money. Rachel and Michael, they can't pay back what you lost from the cancellations. They don't have that kind of savings, and with the baby coming, they're really struggling financially. I set down my coffee cup carefully, processing what she was saying. And this is my problem, how exactly? Susan, please. I know you're angry, but Rachel is your sister. She's having panic attacks about the debt. The stress isn't good for the baby. The audacity was breathtaking. My sister had stolen my fiancé. My parents had chosen her side, and now they wanted me to fix the financial consequences of their choices. Mom, let me make sure I understand this correctly. Rachel and Michael destroyed my life, you all supported them in doing it, and now you want me to pay for their wedding because they can't afford to clean up their own mess? It's not like that, Susan. We just thought maybe you could help out, just this once. Family helps family. Where was that philosophy when I needed help 3 months ago? I asked. Where was the family support when I was humiliated and betrayed? We were trying to support everyone, Susan. It was a complicated situation. It wasn't complicated at all, Mom. It was very simple. My sister betrayed me, and you chose her over me. Now you're living with the consequences. I hung up before she could respond, but I knew this wasn't over. They wouldn't give up that easily. Sure enough, the calls kept coming. Different numbers, different family members, but always the same message. Susan, you need to fix this. Susan, think about the baby. Susan, don't be selfish. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below, because trust me, you're not going to see this coming. I ignored every call and deleted every voicemail without listening. But then something happened that changed everything. I got a call from a number I did recognize. Derek, Rachel's ex-boyfriend. Susan? I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from your old coworker, Jessica. Derek, is everything okay? I need to tell you something about Rachel and Michael, something they don't want anyone to know. My blood went cold. What kind of something? Can we meet in person? I'm actually in San Francisco for work this week. I know it's weird, but I think you deserve to know the truth about what really happened. We met the next evening at a quiet restaurant in my neighborhood. Derek looked tired and older than I remembered, like the past few months had aged him years. I've been debating whether to tell you this, he said after we ordered drinks. But watching how they treated you, and seeing how your family expects you to just take care of everything now, I can't stay quiet anymore. Tell me what, Derek? He took a deep breath. Rachel wasn't pregnant when she made that announcement at your parents' house. I stared at him, not understanding. What do you mean? She wasn't pregnant yet. She and Michael had been having the affair, like she said, but there was no baby. She made that up to force the situation and make sure Michael would leave you for her. The restaurant seemed to spin around me. But she's pregnant now, right? I mean, it's been 3 months. Derek nodded grimly. She is now, but not then. She was terrified that Michael was getting cold feet about leaving you, especially after he saw how devastated you were. So she lied about being pregnant to trap him. How do you know all this? Because she told me. She was drunk about a month ago and called me, crying about how guilty she felt. She said she'd been trying to get pregnant for real ever since that night, and she finally succeeded about 6 weeks ago. I felt sick. The pregnancy that my entire family had rallied around, the innocent baby that had made my feelings irrelevant, hadn't even existed when they destroyed my life. Does Michael know? I don't think so. And here's the thing, Susan. I think she only told me because she's starting to realize what she's gotten herself into. Michael isn't the guy she thought he was. What do you mean? Derek hesitated, then leaned forward. He's controlling. Really controlling. He's isolated her from all her friends, monitors her spending, and has convinced her that she can't work while she's pregnant. She's basically trapped in that house with no money and no independence. I should have felt satisfied hearing that my sister was miserable, but instead, I just felt empty. None of this changed what they'd done to me, but it did explain why my family was suddenly so desperate for my help. There's something else, Derek continued, about the money situation. It's worse than they're telling you. How much worse? Michael quit his job 2 weeks ago. He said he wanted to start his own accounting practice, but he hasn't gotten any clients yet. They're behind on the mortgage, and Rachel's scared they're going to lose the house. My house. The house I'd helped buy with my inheritance money. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Rachel asked me to give this to you if I ever saw you again. She wrote it about a month ago, but was too scared to send it. I took the envelope with trembling hands, but didn't open it immediately. Derek, why are you telling me all this? What do you want from me? He looked down at his hands. I want you to know that you dodged a bullet. Michael isn't a good guy, and Rachel, she's not the sister you thought she was. But mostly, I wanted to warn you that they're planning something. What kind of something? Your mom has been talking about coming to San Francisco to see you in person. She thinks if she can just explain the situation face to face, you'll come home and help them out of this mess. The thought of my mother showing up at my apartment, disrupting the peaceful life I'd built for myself, made my stomach churn. When? Soon. Maybe this week. I thanked Derek for the warning and the letter, and we parted ways. Back in my apartment, I sat staring at the envelope for a long time before finally opening it. Rachel's letter was 5 pages of tear-stained confessions and desperate pleas. Reading it was like watching someone slowly drown in the consequences of their own choices. Susan, I know you probably hate me and I don't blame you. I've been trying to write this letter for weeks, but I keep throwing it away because nothing I say can make up for what I did to you. But Derek says I should tell you the truth about everything. So here goes. You were right about Michael. He's not who I thought he was. He's not who any of us thought he was. Since we got married, yes, we had a quick courthouse wedding because he said we needed to make it official for the baby. He's become someone I don't recognize. He controls everything. Where I go, who I talk to, what I spend money on. He made me quit my job at the boutique because he said pregnant women shouldn't be working. But then he quit his job too, saying he was going to start his own business, except he spends most days playing video games and getting angry when I ask about money. We're 3 months behind on the house payments. Your house payments, because I know you put down the down payment with Grandma Helen's money. He keeps saying he's going to figure it out, but I think we're going to lose everything. The worst part is that I'm starting to understand why he was able to cheat on you so easily. He lies about everything. Small things, big things, things that don't even matter. I catch him in lies constantly, and when I confront him, he makes me feel like I'm crazy for questioning him. Mom and Dad keep asking me if you've called, if you've offered to help. They don't understand that this is our mess to clean up, not yours. But I'm scared, Susan. I'm scared about the baby and the money and being stuck with someone who I'm realizing I don't actually love. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know you probably never want to see me again. But if there's any part of you that still cares about your stupid little sister, please call me. Not to give us money or fix our problems, but just to talk. I miss you so much it physically hurts. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm sorry anyway. For everything. Rachel. I read the letter 3 times, feeling a complicated mix of anger, sadness, and something that might have been pity. She was finally seeing Michael's true character, but it was too late. She'd burned every bridge to get to him, and now she was trapped. Part of me wanted to call her. The big sister instinct that had been ingrained in me since childhood was screaming that my little sister needed help. But the rational part of my brain, the part that had been strengthened by 3 months of independence and success, reminded me that Rachel had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. I was still debating what to do when my building's doorman called to let me know I had a visitor. There's a woman here named Diane Mitchell. She says she's your mother. My heart sank. Derek had been right about the timing. Tell her I'm not available, I said. She says she's not leaving until she talks to you. She's been sitting in the lobby for 2 hours. I looked out my window and saw a familiar car in the visitor parking area. She'd driven 16 hours from Ohio to ambush me in person. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find my mother standing in the hallway, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Hello, Susan," she said quietly. "How did you get up here?" I told another resident that I was your mother, and I was worried about you. She let me in. I stood in the doorway, not inviting her inside. "What do you want, Mom?" I want to talk to my daughter. I want to understand why you're punishing your whole family because you're angry at Rachel and Michael. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm living my life. A life that doesn't include your family. Susan, this has gone on long enough. Rachel is pregnant and struggling. Your father is having chest pains from the stress, and I haven't slept properly in weeks. When does this end? It ends when you stop expecting me to fix problems I didn't create, I said. She looked past me into my apartment, taking in the modern furniture and stunning view. You've done well for yourself out here. Yes, I have. Your company called me, when I was trying to get your number. They spoke very highly of you. Said you were one of their best employees. I wasn't sure where she was going with this. They also mentioned that you got a substantial signing bonus and that your salary is quite impressive. And there it was. She hadn't come to apologize or reconcile. She'd come to assess my financial situation and figure out how much money she could guilt me into sending home. Mom, if you're here to ask me for money, you can turn around and drive back to Ohio right now. I'm not asking for money, Susan. I'm asking for family support. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not in this situation. Your sister is pregnant and scared. Her husband is failing at everything he touches. They're about to lose their home. How can you just sit here in this beautiful apartment and not care? The same way you all sat in your house 3 months ago and watched my life fall apart while telling me to be supportive and mature. That was different. How? How was that different? She was quiet for a long moment. Because this is about an innocent baby. No, Mom, this is about the consequences of choices. Rachel chose to have an affair with my fiancé. Michael chose to leave me for her. You and Dad chose to support them instead of me. Now you all get to live with those choices. I started to close the door, but she put her hand out to stop me. Susan, please, I know we handled things badly before. I know we should have been more supportive of you. But we can't change the past. We can only try to do better moving forward. You're right, you can't change the past. But you can acknowledge it. You can apologize for it. You can admit that you failed me when I needed you most. Fine. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Is that enough? Can we move past this now? The casual way she threw out the apology, like it was just a box to check off so we could get to the real business of me rescuing everyone, made my blood boil. No, Mom. It's not enough. And I'm not moving past anything until you all figure out how to be a family that supports each other instead of just expecting one person to sacrifice for everyone else's benefit. So what are you saying? That you're never coming home? That you're just going to cut us off forever? I'm saying that I'm building a life where people value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. If you want to be part of that life, you need to figure out how to be the kind of people who deserve it. I closed the door, leaving my mother standing in the hallway. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for several minutes before finally walking away. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The harassment started the next day. Not from my mother, but from Michael. It began with text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, all saying variations of the same thing. This is Michael, please call me. We need to talk about Rachel and the baby. When I blocked those numbers, he started calling my work phone. My assistant, Maria, came into my office looking confused. Susan, there's a man online too who says he's your brother-in-law and it's a family emergency. Should I put him through? No, I said firmly. And if he calls again, tell him that he needs to go through our legal department if he has any official business with me. But Michael wasn't deterred. The next day, he somehow got my personal email address and sent me a long message titled, "Please read this, it's about Rachel's health." Susan, I know you don't want to hear from me, but Rachel's doctor is concerned about her stress levels. She's been having anxiety attacks that are affecting the baby's development. The doctor says that resolving family conflicts could significantly improve her condition. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you in the worst possible way. But whatever anger you have toward me, please don't take it out on Rachel and the innocent baby she's carrying. We're not asking you to forgive us or forget what happened. We're just asking you to help us get through this rough patch financially so Rachel can focus on having a healthy pregnancy. If you loan us the money to catch up on the house payments and cover some medical expenses, we'll pay you back with interest as soon as my business takes off. I have several potential clients interested in my services. Please, Susan. I'm begging you. Not for me, but for Rachel and your future niece or nephew. The manipulation was so obvious, it was almost insulting, using the baby's health to guilt me into funding their lifestyle while Michael played entrepreneur instead of getting a real job. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Amanda, whom I'd hired to help me navigate the financial separation from Michael. She called me within an hour. Susan, this email is essentially harassment. He's using emotional manipulation to try to coerce money from you. Do you want to pursue a restraining order? Not yet, I said. Let's see how far they're willing to take this. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, I got a call from Derek again. Susan, I think you should know that Michael is telling people you're loaded with money and refusing to help your pregnant sister out of spite. What people? Everyone. Mutual friends, extended family, people at church. He's painting you as this cold, heartless person who got rich and abandoned her family. The character assassination was starting. I wasn't surprised, but I was disappointed that my own family was allowing it to happen. There's more, Derek continued. He's also been asking people for money, using Rachel's pregnancy as leverage. He told your Aunt Martha that you'd promised to help, but then changed your mind. And now they're desperate. Aunt Martha was my father's sister, a sweet woman who'd always been kind to me. The thought of Michael lying to her to get money made me furious. How much did he get from her? $2,000. She mortgaged her wedding ring to get it. That was the last straw. Michael had now moved beyond harassing me to scamming elderly family members using lies about my involvement. I called Amanda back and told her I wanted to pursue legal action for harassment and fraud. But before we could file anything, the situation escalated even further. I was working late in my office when Maria buzzed in to tell me that there were people in the lobby asking to see me. What kind of people? A pregnant woman and a man. They say they're your sister and brother-in-law and that it's urgent. They'd flown to San Francisco. Pregnant Rachel had gotten on a plane to confront me in person. Tell security not to let them up. If they don't leave voluntarily, have them escorted out. But 20 minutes later, Maria called again. Susan, they're refusing to leave. The woman is crying and saying she's having pregnancy complications and needs to talk to you about medical expenses. Security doesn't want to forcibly remove a pregnant woman. I looked out my office window and could see them in the lobby below. Rachel did look terrible, pale and thin despite her small baby bump. Michael was pacing beside her, gesturing angrily at the security guard. Against my better judgment, I went downstairs. What are you doing here, Rachel? I asked as I approached them. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Susan, thank God. We need to talk. Please, just 5 minutes. You flew across the country to ask me for money? We flew across the country because our family is falling apart, and you're the only one who can fix it, Michael said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I'm not family anymore, remember? You made that clear when you chose each other over me. Susan, please, Rachel said, struggling to stand up from the lobby chair. I know we hurt you. I know we don't deserve your help, but I'm scared. The doctor says I need to reduce my stress levels or there could be complications with the baby. And the stress is mostly about money and losing the house. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed your relationship with the one person in the family who had the financial stability to help in emergencies. Michael stepped forward. His face flushed. You know what? Susan, I'm glad this happened. I'm glad I found out what kind of person you really are before we got married. You're selfish and vindictive, and you clearly never loved me at all if you can watch my wife suffer like this. His wife. The casual way he said it. Like Rachel had always been his wife, and I was just some obstacle they'd had to overcome. Made something snap inside me. You're right, Michael. I'm glad this happened too. Because now I know that the man I thought I loved was actually a lying, cheating, manipulative sociopath who would rather scam elderly relatives than get a real job to support his pregnant wife. What are you talking about? I know about Aunt Martha's money. I know you've been telling people I promised to help and then backed out. I know you're using Rachel's pregnancy to guilt money out of anyone who will listen. Rachel looked confused. What money from Aunt Martha? Michael's face went white. I don't know what she's talking about. $2,000. Rachel. He told her I'd promised to help but changed my mind, so she mortgaged her wedding ring to help you guys out. Rachel turned to stare at Michael, her mouth hanging open. You told me that money came from your unemployment benefits. It did, You lied to me. Again. Rachel's voice was quiet but deadly. Rachel, let me explain. No. She stood up shakily, one hand on her stomach. I'm done with the lies, Michael. I'm done with all of it. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Susan, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything we put you through, and I'm sorry for coming here and trying to manipulate you into fixing our mess. You don't owe us anything. With that, she walked out of the building, leaving Michael staring after her in shock. He turned back to me, desperation replacing the anger in his eyes. Susan, you can't let her leave like this. She's pregnant, she's emotional, she's not thinking clearly. She's thinking more clearly than she has in months, I said. Maybe you should try it sometime. This is all your fault, he said, his voice rising. If you had just helped us out like family is supposed to do, none of this would have happened. No, Michael, this happened because you're a liar and a cheat who thought you could manipulate your way out of the consequences of your choices. Rachel is finally seeing you for who you really are. She'll come back. She has nowhere else to go. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, she does. I called Derek, who answered immediately. Derek, it's Susan. Rachel is at the San Francisco airport and she needs a friend. Can you pick her up? Of course. Is she okay? She will be. I hung up and looked at Michael one last time. Your wife is going to stay with Derek until she figures out what she wants to do next. I suggest you use that time to decide what kind of man you want to be, because the one you've been pretending to be isn't working anymore. Security escorted him from the building, and I went back to my office to call my lawyer. It was time to make sure Michael never harassed me or my family again. But the real surprise was still coming. 3 weeks later, I got a call that changed everything. Susan, it's Rachel. I hadn't expected to hear from her again after the airport incident. How are you doing? Better. Much better, actually. I'm staying with Derek, and his parents have been incredibly supportive. They're helping me figure out my next steps. And Michael? We're getting divorced. I filed the papers yesterday. I was surprised by the relief I felt hearing those words. Not because I wanted Michael back. That ship had sailed long ago. But because it meant Rachel was finally putting herself and her baby first. How are you feeling about that? Scared, but also free for the first time in months. Susan, there's something I need to tell you. About the house. What about it? I've been going through Michael's financial records with Derek's help, and we found some things. Bad things. My stomach dropped. What kind of bad things? He's been forging your signature on documents, loan applications, refinancing paperwork, credit card applications. He's been using your credit history and the fact that your name was on the original mortgage to take out additional loans against the house. I felt dizzy. How much? About $80,000. Susan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was doing this. I thought the money problems were just from him not working, but he's been actively stealing from you for months. The room started spinning. Michael hadn't just cheated on me and left me for my sister. He'd been committing financial fraud using my identity. Rachel, I need to call my lawyer immediately. Can you send me copies of everything you found? I already did. Derek helped me scan everything and email it to you. Susan, there's more. More what? He's been doing this to other people too. His business partner from his old accounting firm, his brother, even his elderly neighbor. We found loan documents with forged signatures from at least 6 different people. Michael wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a serial fraudster who'd been using his access to personal information to steal from anyone he could target. Have you gone to the police? Not yet. Derek's dad is a retired cop, and he says we need to organize all the evidence first. But Susan, the house is going to be foreclosed on. There's no way to catch up on all the payments he's missed, and with all the additional loans, you'd be liable for way more than the house is worth. I understand. The house had been tainted for me anyway. Knowing that Michael had been using it as collateral for fraudulent loans just confirmed that I needed to cut all ties completely. Susan, I want to testify against him for what he did to you, to me, to everyone. Will you press charges? It was the first time in this entire nightmare that Rachel had offered to actually help me instead of asking for help. Yes, I said. But first I need to protect myself financially. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with Amanda, my credit card companies, and the bank that held the mortgage. The damage was worse than Rachel had initially described. Michael had managed to rack up over $100,000 in debt using my information, and because we'd been engaged in living together, proving fraud was going to be complicated. But there was a silver lining that I hadn't expected. Susan, Amanda said during our emergency meeting the next day, there's something interesting in these documents. Michael made a crucial mistake. What kind of mistake? He forged your signature on several documents dated after your engagement ended. We have proof that you were already in San Francisco when these loans were supposedly signed. That makes this clear-cut fraud rather than a civil dispute between former partners. What does that mean? It means we can not only pursue criminal charges, but we can also sue him for damages. And here's the best part. His homeowner's insurance policy includes coverage for identity theft. If we can prove fraud, which we can, the insurance company will cover your losses and then go after Michael to recover the money. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I felt like the system might actually work in favor of the victim instead of the perpetrator. How long will this take? Criminal charges could take months to resolve, but the insurance claim should move faster. I'd estimate you could recover most of your losses within 6 weeks. I called Rachel that evening to update her on the legal situation. Thank God, she said when I explained about the insurance coverage. Susan, I've been sick with guilt about what he did to you financially. I knew our money problems were bad, but I never imagined he was actively stealing. Rachel, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you call me when you started realizing what kind of person he really was? Before it got this bad? There was a long pause. Because I was ashamed. I knew that everyone had told me I was making a mistake, and I was too proud to admit that I'd destroyed my relationship with my sister for a man who wasn't worth it. And now I realize that pride is a luxury I can't afford. I'm going to be a single mother, and I need my family. Real family, not people who just claim to care about me when it's convenient. What about mom and dad? They're struggling with everything that's come out about Michael. I think they're starting to realize that supporting my relationship with him wasn't just bad for you. It was bad for me too. Have you talked to them about the fraud? Yes. Dad wants to call you, but he's afraid you won't answer. I thought about that for a moment. Tell him he can call me, but only if he's ready to have a real conversation about how this family has been functioning and what needs to change. I'll tell him. Susan, there's one more thing. What? I want to pay you back. For the wedding deposits, for the money you lost, for everything. It's going to take me years, but I want to make this right. Rachel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Not because anyone is making me, but because it's the right thing to do. I created this mess, and I need to take responsibility for cleaning it up. For the first time in months, my little sister sounded like the person I'd grown up with, the person I'd thought I'd lost forever. Okay, I said. But we do it on reasonable terms that don't hurt you or the baby. Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking out at the San Francisco Bay, thinking about how dramatically my life had changed in just 6 months. I'd lost a fiancé, a sister, and the support of my parents. But I'd gained something much more valuable. The knowledge that I was strong enough to rebuild my life on my own terms. The hardest part was over, but the biggest shock was still coming. The call from my father came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing presentation slides for a major client meeting. Susan? His voice was shaky and uncertain. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. Hi, Dad. I set aside my work and gave him my full attention. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the kind your mother tried to give you. I owe you an explanation for how badly I failed you when you needed me most. This wasn't what I'd expected. Dad had always been the more reserved parent, letting Mom take the lead on family drama. Hearing him take ownership was both surprising and encouraging. I'm listening. When Rachel told us about the affair and the pregnancy, your mother and I panicked. We didn't know how to handle it, so we defaulted to trying to keep everyone happy and avoid conflict. But in doing that, we completely abandoned you. Yes, you did. We told ourselves we were being fair, trying to support everyone equally. But that was a lie. We were taking the easy path, supporting the people who needed the least courage to support. I was quiet, letting him continue. It would have taken courage to tell Rachel that her choices had consequences. It would have taken courage to tell Michael that we couldn't welcome him into the family after what he'd done to our daughter. It would have taken courage to put your well-being first, when you were the one who'd been wronged. Why are you telling me this now, Dad? Because watching what Michael did to you financially, seeing how he manipulated and lied to everyone, including Rachel, I realized something. We didn't just fail to support you. We actively enabled someone who was hurting you. He paused, and I could hear him struggling with emotion. Susan, I've spent the last month thinking about what kind of father I've been to you over the years, and I don't like what I see. What do you mean? I mean that this wasn't the first time we expected you to be the mature one, the responsible one, the one who sacrifices for everyone else's comfort. We've been doing it your whole life. He was right. And hearing him acknowledge it was both validating and painful. When you were 16 and Rachel wrecked your car, we made you share yours with her instead of making her face the consequences. When you got into state university and she didn't, we spent your college fund on tutoring and test prep to get her into a better school. When you graduated and got your first job, we expected you to help with her student loans. I remembered all of those incidents and dozens more like them. We always told ourselves it was because you were stronger, more capable, more mature. But really it was because you were easier. You didn't throw tantrums or make demands or threaten to cut us off. So we kept asking more of you and less of her. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because I need you to understand that what happened with Michael wasn't an aberration. It was the culmination of 28 years of us treating you like your feelings and needs mattered less than everyone else's. I was crying now. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally understood the pattern that had shaped my entire relationship with my family. Where do we go from here? I asked. I don't know. I hope we can find a way forward, but I understand if we can't. I understand if the damage is too deep to repair. It's not too deep, Dad. But things have to change. Really change. Not just temporarily change until the next crisis. I agree. Your mother and I have been talking about getting family counseling. Not to manipulate you into coming back, but to figure out how to be better people and better parents. What about Rachel? Rachel is doing her own work. She's in therapy, she's taking parenting classes, and she's working on being independent for the first time in her life. She's not asking for our financial help even though money is tight. And Michael? Michael is going to prison. The district attorney says that with all the fraud evidence Rachel provided, he's looking at 5 to 7 years. The news should have felt like victory, but mostly it just felt like closure. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. What? I'm not moving back to Ohio. This is my life now, and I'm happy here. I know, and I'm proud of you for building something good for yourself, even after we failed you so badly. But that doesn't mean we can't have a relationship. It just means it has to be different. Better. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like that very much. We talked for another hour about practical things. The legal proceedings against Michael, Rachel's pregnancy progress, and my work in San Francisco. But mostly we talked about rebuilding trust and establishing new boundaries that would protect everyone involved. When we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because everything was fixed, but because someone in my family had finally taken responsibility for their part in breaking it. But the real shock came 3 days later, in a phone call that would change everything I thought I knew about this situation. It was Detective Martinez from the Ohio State Police Fraud Division. Ms. Mitchell, we need to ask you some questions about Michael Thompson and his financial activities. We've discovered some additional information that affects your case. What kind of information? We've been investigating Mr. Thompson's activities over the past 2 years, and we've uncovered evidence that his fraud schemes were much more extensive than we initially thought. My heart sank. How much more extensive? Ms. Mitchell, we have reason to believe that Mr. Thompson has been planning this for over a year. The affair with your sister, the pregnancy announcement, even the wedding cancellation. We think it was all part of an elaborate scheme to access your financial information and credit history. The room started spinning. What are you saying? We're saying that Mr. Thompson may have targeted your sister specifically because she was your family member and would give him access to your personal information. We found evidence on his computer suggesting that he researched your financial status extensively before beginning the relationship with Rachel. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal I thought was personal and emotional was actually calculated and financial. Detective, are you telling me that Michael manipulated my sister into having an affair so he could steal from me? That's what the evidence suggests. We found emails between Mr. Thompson and an associate discussing your income, your property ownership, and your credit score. These emails date back 14 months, well before the affair supposedly began. Rachel hadn't just betrayed me for love or lust or whatever she thought she was feeling. She'd been a pawn in a con game that targeted me specifically for my financial assets. Does Rachel know about this? We're planning to interview her tomorrow. Given that she's also a victim in this scheme, we wanted to speak with you first. After I hung up with the detective, I sat in my apartment trying to process this new information. Everything I thought I understood about the situation was wrong. Rachel hadn't stolen my fiancé. She'd been manipulated by a sociopath who was using her to get to me. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Rachel, her voice panicked and breathless. Susan, the police just called. They want to interview me tomorrow about Michael. They're saying things that don't make sense. Rachel, sit down. I need to tell you what they told me. I explained everything the detective had revealed, watching my entire understanding of the past year crumble and reshape itself. He was using me, Rachel whispered when I finished. The whole time he was using me to get to you. Yes. Susan, I'm so sorry. I thought I was in love with him. I thought he loved me. I destroyed our relationship for someone who was just using me as a tool to hurt you. Rachel, you were a victim too. We both were. But I should have known. I should have questioned why someone like Michael would suddenly be interested in me when he was engaged to someone as successful and beautiful as you. Don't do that to yourself. He's a professional manipulator. This wasn't about you not being good enough. This was about him being a criminal who targeted our family. We talked for 2 more hours, piecing together clues that made sense now but had been invisible at the time. Michael's sudden interest in Rachel right after I'd told him about my promotion and salary increase. His questions about my family finances that I'd thought were normal relationship discussions. His insistence on being added to my bank accounts and mortgage after we got engaged. The pregnancy, Rachel said suddenly. Susan, What if the pregnancy was planned too? What if he was trying to trap me so I couldn't back out when things got complicated? It was possible. Given everything else we'd learned about Michael's calculating nature, an unplanned pregnancy seemed like exactly the kind of leverage he'd want to ensure Rachel stayed committed to the scheme. It doesn't matter now, I told her. What matters is that you're free of him and you're safe. What about the baby? The baby is innocent in all of this. And you're going to be a great mother. Susan, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Not just for the affair, but for being so stupid that I let someone use me to hurt you? I thought about it for a long moment. Rachel, I forgave you weeks ago. Now I understand that there's nothing to forgive. We were both victims of the same predator. I love you, Susan. I should have said that months ago. I love you too. After we hung up, I realized that this revelation, as shocking as it was, had given me something I hadn't expected. My sister back. 1 year later, I was sitting in my San Francisco office when my assistant buzzed in to tell me that I had visitors. Susan, there's a woman with a baby here to see you. She says she's your sister. I smiled, telling Maria to send them up immediately. Rachel appeared in my doorway, holding a beautiful 6-month-old baby girl with dark hair and bright green eyes. Susan, I'd like you to meet your niece, Helen Susan Thompson. I felt tears spring to my eyes as I realized she'd named the baby after our grandmother and me. She's beautiful, Rachel. She looks like you, Rachel said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Everyone says so. Rachel looked healthy and happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. She'd lost the stressed, frightened expression that had become her default during the Michael years, and there was a confidence in her posture that spoke of real independence. How are things going? Really good. Derek and I got married last month. Just a small ceremony with his family and dad. We're buying a house in his hometown, and I got a job at the local elementary school. Derek asked you to marry him? Rachel laughed. Actually, I asked him. After everything that happened with Michael, I realized I wanted to be with someone who actually knew me and loved me for who I am, not what I could give him access to. And he said yes to instant fatherhood. He said yes to me. The baby was part of the package, and he's been amazing with her. I held out my arms, and Rachel transferred little Helen to me. She was tiny and perfect, and smelled like baby powder and innocence. Susan, I came here for 2 reasons. First, I wanted you to meet Helen. But second, I have something for you. She reached into her diaper bag and pulled out an envelope. What's this? It's a check for $43,000. I stared at the number, confused. Rachel, where did you get this kind of money? From Michael's conviction settlement. When he pled guilty to the fraud charges, part of his plea agreement included restitution payments to all his victims. This is your portion. I don't understand. The insurance already covered my losses. This is separate. This is for emotional damages and punitive compensation. The judge said that what he did to our family went beyond financial fraud into psychological manipulation and emotional abuse. I looked at the check, still processing. Rachel, you should keep this. You're a single mother, you need... I'm not a single mother anymore. Remember? And Derek has a good job. We're fine financially. But the baby... Susan, stop. This money belongs to you. Take it. I folded the check and put it in my desk drawer. Thank you. There's something else. Dad wanted me to give you this. She handed me a letter with my father's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a short note. Susan, your mother and I have been in counseling for 6 months now, working on understanding how we failed you and Rachel over the years. We've learned a lot about ourselves that we don't like, but we're committed to doing better. We love you, and we're proud of the woman you've become despite our failures as parents. We hope that someday you'll feel comfortable coming home for a visit, but we understand if that day never comes. Either way, know that you are loved and missed every day. Dad. They really are different, Rachel said, watching me read. The counseling has helped them understand a lot of things about how they treated us growing up. And how are you doing with all of that? Better. It helps to understand that Michael didn't target me because I was weak or stupid. He targeted me because I'd been conditioned my whole life to prioritize other people's needs over my own judgment. She was right. Our parents' pattern of expecting Rachel to be taken care of and me to do the taking care of had made her the perfect mark for Michael's manipulation. Are you happy, Rachel? Really happy. For the first time in my life, I'm with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can do for them or what I can give them access to. Derek doesn't want to change me or control me or use me. He just wants to build a life together. That's what love is supposed to be. Yes, it is. And Susan, you deserve that too. I'm working on it, I said. I'm dating someone, actually. A man I met through work who doesn't know anything about my family drama and likes me just for me. That's wonderful! We spent the next 2 hours catching up, with Helen sleeping peacefully in my arms while Rachel told me about her new life. When it was time for them to leave, Rachel hugged me tightly. Susan, I know I can never fully make up for what happened, but I want you to know that losing you was the worst part of everything. Worse than the divorce, worse than the financial problems, worse than finding out I'd been manipulated. Losing my sister was the thing that almost broke me. You didn't lose me, I said. You found me again. Will you come visit us sometime? Helen should know her Aunt Susan. Yes, I said without hesitation. I'd love that. After they left, I sat in my office holding the check and my father's letter, thinking about how dramatically my life had changed since that terrible night in my parents' living room. I'd lost a fiancé who turned out to be a criminal. I'd lost the naive trust I'd had in my family's unconditional support. I'd lost the version of myself that prioritized keeping peace over protecting my own well-being. But I'd gained so much more. I'd gained real independence and financial security. I'd gained the knowledge that I was strong enough to rebuild my life from scratch. I'd gained a relationship with my sister that was based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. And most importantly, I'd gained the understanding that my worth wasn't determined by how much I was willing to sacrifice for other people's comfort. The money I'd recovered from Michael's insurance and now his restitution would go into a college fund for Helen. I wanted her to grow up knowing that she had choices, that she didn't have to depend on anyone else for her security or happiness. I looked out my office window at the San Francisco Bay, thinking about how the view had become a symbol of the life I'd built for myself. It was a life where people valued me for who I was, not what I could provide for them. It was a life where I set the boundaries and made the rules. It was a life worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about people who found the strength to rebuild their lives after betrayal. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened, because it forces you to discover just how strong you really are. And sometimes, the family that matters most isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build around yourself.